Welcome to the round number 2 of the FIDE World Cup 2025 happening in Goa. In this video, we are going to look at 3 games which can be considered the game of the round number 2. 3 games, Harikrishna Pentala. I believe this game is going to be the game of the year maybe. Second game, one of the biggest upsets in the round number 2 of the FIDE World Cup. And third, the most unexpected result that you can imagine in a drawn position, which is insane. So yeah, I hope that you're going to love this analysis, love this. All the games are pretty amazing. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to start with the game which has the potential to become the game of the year. Definitely the game of the tournament already. Harikrishna Pentala playing with the white pieces versus Nestorov Arseni. It's the round number 2, the game number 2. The player who wins will qualify for the round number 3. Hari playing with the white pieces opens the game with 1 e4, e5, knight f3. We have the Petrov on the board and now d4, striking in the center. We have the move knight cross e4. If black goes for capturing the pawn on d4, e5, the knight centralizes itself. Queen d4 attacking the knight, d5, takes. It's another way to play, but the queen is well centralized and I believe white should be slightly better. That's why the main move here is to play the move knight cross e4. And now we have the move d cross e5 on the board, which is insane. How come it's insane? The most common move is to play the move knight cross e5. After d6, knight f3, d5, that's how the game goes on. But Hari played the move d cross e5, surprising his opponent, though I want you guys to make sure to check the clock of both the players in each move. Bishop c5, both the players are nicely prepared. After bishop c5, basically why this move d cross e5 is a crazy move, because after bishop c5, the knight and the bishop attacks the pawn on f2, and there is no good way to defend the pawn. If bishop e3, fe3, white is having double bad pawns on the same file and black is already better. Hari played the move queen e5. He's already in his preparation. He's still having 1 hour 29 minutes on his clock, attacking the bishop and the knight. The main point is to simply capture the knight. Black have to take the pawn on f2, giving a check, the king move, and now f5. Both the players are still in their preparation. And guess what? Already in the past 2 games have been played in this particular position. I don't know the names, but there have been 2 games. f5, protecting the knight on e4. We have the move knight to c3. If white tries to end pass, knight f6, queen can give a check, king here. You can't take the bishop because knight g4 and you lose the queen. We have knight g5 check. If king f8, knight c3, the bishop goes back because you still can't take the bishop because there is knight g4. You move the knight, bishop b6, black is a pawn up and simply better. That's insane. Going back, we have the move knight c3. And in this position, if black goes for capturing the knight, takes, white is simply winning now. Why? Because the bishop is hanging, the bishop have to go back, bishop g5, and guess what? The queen is trapped and white is winning. So that's why we first have c6 attacking the queen, making some space for the black queen to run away. Knight takes on d5, on e4, which is already an insane move. Another insane move on the board. Knight e4. Now in this position, if fe4 takes, bishop goes back, bishop g5, the queen move, rook e1. Material wise, the position is even, but white has gotten all his pieces and white is totally winning. So black's best bet is to capture the queen, and that's exactly what happened in the game. Knight check, the king move, white took the bishop. And now let's try to evaluate the position. White is having the knight and the bishop. Only the knight and the bishop for the queen and the pawn. And guess what? You guys can see the bar. The position is slightly favor for black. It means there is something crazy happening up on the board. It's never easy to play with the black pieces when you're +4 in the point rating, but the advantage is nearly equal. We have the move knight c6, simply developing the piece, bishop e3, and now we have d4 by black. The idea here is if knight d4, black wants to play the move f4 and black is simply winning. You take the pawn, I take the knight. You take the knight, I'll just give a check and take here. Black is completely winning. So white moved the bishop, queen b6 with the idea of maybe d3, giving some checks, capturing the pawn on b2 makes a lot of sense. Bishop d3. Now we have knight e7. Now, after bishop d3, white wants to capture the pawn on f5. So for example, we have knight e7 in the game. If black plays something like g6, already a check and h4, h5 is already a very threatening idea. White is already better. Instead, we have the move knight e7 by black in the game. Bishop d2, knight goes to d5. So first of all, bishop d2 was a very nice move because black wants to play the move knight to d5 attacking the bishop. So it's sort of a prophylaxis move, knight d5 and now bishop cross f5 and now knight e3. If black becomes a bit tempting with a d3 check, a discovered check, nothing is happening after king g3 takes, bishop c2, queen takes the b2 pawn, bishop b3. You can't take the bishop on d2 because it's defended. I'm attacking the knight. The rook is going to come on f1 and black king is doomed. White is winning the game. Black played the move knight e3. Bishop goes back to d3. King moved to e7. Rook e1. Rook f8. And now it's time to sack the rook. Rook cross e3. You have to take, and now rook cross f3 check. If black goes for example, capturing the pawn on b2, bishop g5 check, bishop c4 check. It's not a check, it's a mate. You have to sack the rook, takes, queen b2, and now check, and now we have rook e1. Now a better approach would have been to play the move bishop c4 check, rook d1 defending the knight with the threat of bishop f4, which looks very tempting. Check, check, and now like if this would have happened in the game, rook d1 queen check, king g4. Now sacrificing the queen is the best bet because bishop f4 is totally winning. Even rook d5 is coming up, that's game over. So bishop c4 check would have been best, but in the game we had rook e1, b5 because bishop c4 is a checkmate now because the pawn is no longer hanging. So b5, bishop f5 check, the king move check, white captures the rook, rook e3, bishop goes back, king move, h4 now, and after h4 on the move number 29, black decides to resign the game. Why? Because black is having no legal move to make. For example, let's say bishop a6. Bishop f3, the queen have to go on g6, that's the only move. Rook e3, now the bishop is no longer having any move, so let's say bishop b7 takes h6. It looks like black is going to get the piece back, but not so soon. We have bishop e4, the queen move, bishop attacks the queen one more again, the queen have to go back and knight simply takes the pawn. You can't even take the bishop because rook a6 and you lose the queen. So that's the reason on the move number 29 after h4, black decides to resign the game and Harikrishna Pentala won a fabulous game. This was the game number one of the most interesting, one of the most played in the spirit of Mikhail Tal. Has the potential to become of the game of the year. So yeah, this was the game. Game number 1. This is just the beginning. 2 more games to go. Let's move on to the game number 2. Okay, now discussing the game number 2. I call this game the upsetting game. This is the game, this is one of the most biggest upset that has been made in the World Cup 2025. The game was played between Nepomniachtchi versus Diptyan Ghosh. Diptyan Ghosh is from India, having the rating of 2573. His peak rating was 2577. You can already say he is sort of in his peak. Nepomniachtchi, having white pieces, already played 3 World Championships, 2 against Magnus, 1 against Deng. Playing with white, very hard to beat. 1 e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the royal pace on the board, a6, bishop goes back. Giving you a small context, if you're a beginner, bishop c6, dc6, knight e5, it looks like white is a pawn up, but after queen d4, black is going to regain the pawn and having the bishop pair advantage, black is already better. Have to go back, knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, castle up. If black goes for capturing the pawn on e4, d4, striking in the center, the king is already safe as the king has already castled up. Rook e1 is going to come up. It's already very hard to play with the black pieces. We have bishop e7, a very solid approach to play. Rook e1, b5, attacking the bishop goes back, castle up, a4, b4, d4, striking in the center. Now we have the move d6. Now, if you try to go for capturing the pawn, that would be a bad idea. Never capture. Allow your opponent to capture, because after takes, e5, the knight goes back, bishop d5. Now knight d4 is coming up. You can't take because the rook is hanging. White is already better. We have d6, a very fine move to play. We have d cross e5. Now, if d5, black can play knight a5 with the idea of c6, c5, and that's another way to play, very, very common. Instead, Nepo decides to take, and play the move knight b to d2. I believe that's one of my suggestions. Knight d2 is having no problem, but I believe bishop f4 would have been best. Knight g6, bishop g3, bishop b7, knight d2 now, and you see white has gotten all his pieces, though black has also, but that's a fine position to play. But knight d2, a5, protecting the b4 pawn, making some square for the bishop to go on a6 maybe. We have the move knight trade with queen e2, and now bishop c5. Now, if black gets provoked with the move bishop a6, it would be a bad idea, because after bishop c4 we have a trade, and guess what? White is simply better. How come? Because the e5 pawn is simply attacked by the knight. And the biggest another factors that affect this position here is, for example, after bishop d6, bishop g5 pinning up over here, rook is coming to d1. The pawn structure on the queen side of black is a bit overextended. The e5 pawn is very weak. I can play bishop h4, bishop g3. So basically this bishop is a good bishop. It's an aggressive bishop. Whereas the bishop on d6 is a very passive bishop, a defensive piece. That's the reason white is already better, despite material even. We have bishop c5 by the Nepomniachtchi Ghosh. Now we have knight f3. A nice trap set by Nepomniachtchi, a very sneaky trap. So first of all, the best move in this position would have been knight c4, and after knight g4 attacking the pawn over here, knight e3 is there. After queen h4 threatening a mate, there could be h3. We have a trade, and guess what? Bishop e3 would already be a bad move. White is already better. Queen c5 is coming up. Bishop d5 is coming in. Rook d1 is coming in. Despite being a very normal position, a very drawish position, white is already better. Black have to go back to e7. That's the best bet that black can go for. Instead, Nepo played the move knight f3. Now in this position, if black becomes a bit greedy and goes for playing the move knight g4, that would be a bad idea. It looks like once again the f2 pawn is attacked. There is no good way to defend. If bishop e3, black can take, and black is simply happy. But white is having a very nice move, which is bishop g5 attacking the queen. The moment the queen moves, bishop h4 defends the pawn on f2, rook d1 is coming up, the g4 knight is a bit misplaced. I can put the bishop on g3, attack the pawn on e5. White is already better. That's the reason knight g4 would be a bad idea. The Tan first played the move queen e7, and now Nepo played the move h3, which turned out to be an inaccuracy, or I would say a mistake of the game. h3 covers the g4 square. Looks very logical, but now comes bishop a6 attacking the queen, and guess what? The queen is not really having many squares available, only 2. But if you just try to move the queen to d1, which exactly happened in the game, it allows rook d8. Now if white plays bishop c4 in this position, this would be a blunder, because it allows black to play the move bishop f2 check. You take with the queen, you lose the bishop on c4. You have to take with the king. Now queen c5 check, you move the king. I just win. You have to go to g3, and I simply take the bishop, and I'm simply better. It's completely winning. If you try to play the move c4, now I can at least end pass in, but there is no need to end pass. I can keep the bishops on the board. Now the b3 bishop is simply a bad piece. It has to play bishop c2 to defend the pawn on e4. But after knight d7, bishop e3, let's say we have a trade, knight c5, e3, f6, and you see the bishop on c2 is extremely bad piece. The bishop on b7 is the best piece. It's attacking. The c5 knight is a very nice piece. I can happily play this position. The rook goes to d8, the knight goes to e6 to d4. Black is the one in the driver's seat, is going to press throughout the game. White has to defend pretty tightly. So definitely Nepo was not happy with this position, so he decides to play the move queen d1, rook d8, knight d2. He admits that his position is extremely bad. Bishop d4, a very nice move and the best move by the Nepomniachtchi Ghosh. After bishop d4, basically after knight d2, white's idea is to play the move queen f3 and get the c3 break to try to open up the position. But after bishop d4, there is no c3 break available because black can simply capture it. And guess what? White is not really having any moves available. You move the knight, I'm having bishop f2 and capture the queen. Nepo has to play the move queen f3, which allowed Diptyan Ghosh to play the move bishop b2. Capturing the pawn, have to capture the bishop. Diptyan captured the knight in this position. Diptyan Ghosh is currently a pawn up. Nepo played the move queen e3, the rook goes back and f4. So currently, Nepo is having the bishop pair, but he's a pawn down, position is bad. He played the move f4, which is not the best according to the engine, but I believe practically speaking up, human-wise, this move makes a lot of sense. Because after f4, you're trying to open up your bishop, which makes a lot of sense. We have a trade, and now you see e5 is already coming up, you need to be sharp. If you give Nepo 1 to 2 move, it's already game over. The question is how to continue. Diptyan Ghosh was very alert. He played the move c5. He's a very calculation. All the Indian players love to calculate. We have c5. Now after c5, the main point here is if white plays e5, there is knight to d5 attacking the queen. The moment the queen moves, there is c4. And the bishop is dead. You take the pawn, there is queen c5 check, another tactic coming up, the same tactic. You lose the bishop on c4 and black is completely winning. So Nepo tried bishop d5, but there is knight d5 takes queen d6, and now we have queen g4. If you try to trade off the queen, after rook d1, bishop c4, you're going to lose another pawn, and that's game over. So we have queen g4, queen g6, we have a trade rook d1, rook d7, d6, rook to d8, defending the pawn, bishop b7, bishop g3. Now bishop c6 attacking the pawn, the bishop have to go to a1, f6, making the square for the king, h4, pawn push, rook d1, rook over here, bishop over here. And now you see, in the game we had g3. But in this position, if, for example, if white plays rook d4, because if you see nicely, white is not really having any move. If rook d3, there is already bishop e4 and you lose the pawn on c2. So basically after c3, black has sort of fixed all white's pawn on the light square. And already the pawns are already too far ahead. So for example, if rook d4, rook e4, you have a trade, the pawn is attacked, you have to defend, the bishop goes back, and the king simply gets the entry and black is completely winning. So we have g3, trying to put the pawns on the dark square, but after rook over here, g5, sacrificing the pawn to get the main pawn on d6. This was completely winning. Rook c4 was played, rook over here, the bishop goes back, rook over here, attacking the bishop. We have rook f1. Now, black can go for capturing the bishop. After takes, this position is still winning for black. But Diptyan first moved the king, pawn push, takes, check, takes, and rook to d6. And guess what? Rook d2 is coming up, and that's totally winning. And guess what? On the move number 46, after rook to d6, Nepomniachtchi decides to resign the game. Why? After king e3, for example, rook d2, rook c1, black can simply get the king, and there is no way you can stop another pawn falling up, and that's totally winning for black. That's the reason on the move number 49, on the move number 46, Nepomniachtchi decides to resign the game, and Diptyan Ghosh has finally moved to the round number 3, and Nepomniachtchi has been eliminated from the candidates, not only from the FIDE World Cup. So yeah, this was the game number 2, one of the biggest upsets in the FIDE World Cup 2025 in the round number 2. So now let's move on to the final game, the game number 3. Okay, so now discussing the game number 3. I call this game one of the weird game. Till the end, both the players made some misjudgment, and that was one of the most, definitely an upset, but one of the craziest decision in the craziest position. You won't believe. So the game is between Stremacius Titas versus Wesley So. Of course, Wesley So is the favorite one to win. 1d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, c4, e6. We have the queen's gambit declined, takes exchange variation. Bishop f4, c6, h3. Now if black's idea is to play knight h5, eliminate the dark square bishop. That's why h3, queen b6, attacking the b2 pawn. We have queen to c2. Now, if queen b3, that would be a bad idea because after takes knight is6, the knight is jumping to b4, to c2, and black is already better. So queen c2, g6 with the idea of bishop f5, e3, bishop f5, queen c1. This is all theory, nothing special. Castle up, g4, bishop goes to e4, and now bishop e2, knight d7, castle up. Both the sides are developing their pieces very normally. And after castle up, both the sides have developed their pieces successfully. We have the move bishop cross f3. Now, for example, if you don't capture the bishop, if you don't capture the knight, because it looks like weird, why black is even giving up the bishop pair. If you try to play something else like rook c8, after knight e1, f3, the bishop is trapped on e4. That's the whole thing. So bishop f3 was sort of forced, and now the question is how to assess this position and how to play this position. Wesley So is a very nice, experienced player, very strong player. He knows how to handle this position. So let me tell you how to play this position, how to evaluate this position. White is having the bishop pair advantage, but at the same time, the king on the king side is a bit weak, a bit shaky because of the overextended pawn structure. So black's idea is to play on the king side. So that's why Wesley goes back with the queen to d8, the best move. Queen c2, now knight to e8. Now knight e8 makes a lot of sense. Wesley wants to play on the king side by getting the f5 break, which is a very common idea. But in this position, a better approach according to the engine was to play the move knight b6, get the rook to e8, which is very non-human. Humans like to play strategy-based chess. Like we humans like to get an idea, build up a strategy and play that strategy. Whereas engine is purely on calculation. He does not really care about strategy. That's why they are able to find such crazy ideas. Instead, knight e8 makes a lot of sense. e4. And you see the moment the knight moves from the f6 square, the e4 square becomes a bit weak. And white jumped on this opportunity with the move e4. Takes bishop e4. Now taking with the knight is also absolutely fine, but takes knight f6 because I believe after taking with the bishop, the idea was to not allow black to play the move f5. So knight f6, rook d1, and you see after rook d1, white is like fine, I'll allow you to capture the bishop. I'll give up my bishop pair advantage, but now d5 is coming up. Though after knight f6, the queen goes back knight d5. After a couple of trade, rook e1, rook e5, white is the one who is going to press throughout the game. Black needs to hold on tight to hold a draw. Of course, Wesley So is not going to allow this. So instead of at the place of capturing the bishop, he first played the move knight c7, keeping the imbalance on the board. Bishop g2, queen d7. Now in this position, knight d5 would have been the best. Takes, d5, takes. Like if you take with the knight, takes, it's an opposite color bishop, most likely ends in a draw. If takes with the bishop, which is the best approach, keeping some imbalance, though anything can happen up, bishop d6, and I don't see much happening up. Any result can be possible in this type of position. So maybe that's the reason he first played the move queen e7, trying to keep some imbalance on the board. Now we have queen b3. Now, white played a very nice move, but the best approach would have been first d5, sacking a pawn. If cd, queen b3, pawn push, because the pawn is simply hanging on d5. So after d4, queen b7, you can't really take the knight because the queen is hanging. You have to defend the rook. You have to defend the knight on c7. Now bishop e5, and white is simply better, even winning. And after d5, if you try to go for capturing with the knight in this position, there is g5, which is the main thing. After knight goes to h5, there is bishop d5, and the point here is you can't take the bishop because there is knight bishop f7, you lose the queen. For example, if c d5, there is knight d5, which is totally winning up. If you try to go for capturing the pawn on h3, there is bishop g2. I can go back with the bishop, and I'm simply a piece up. Though white is having a piece for the two pawns, but yeah. So this would have been the best, but queen b3 is still a fine move. A very safe approach. Knight d5, bishop e5. Rook e8, g5. You see, still the same idea. And now knight c3. Now, according to the engine, the best move is knight h5, but giving up the pawn, white is a pawn up, a passed pawn, white is indeed winning. So So knight c3 a more natural approach, but after takes. Now once again the two pieces are hanging off Wesley. So he went for knight d1, takes. After knight f2, there is bishop f6, which is a very nice move. The best move was rook f2, but bishop f6, a very nice move. Now the e7 pawn is very strong, so Wesley was sort of forced to give up the rook for the bishop and the pawn. And now we have this position where white is having the bishop for the 2 pawns. And now going ahead, we have this position where both the sides trade off the rook. And now I have sort of played these types of end games where I was playing with the black pieces. I was not really having 2 pawns for the bishop, but only 1 pawn for the bishop. And despite that, it's extremely hard for white, the person with the bishop, to win the game. Believe me, it's not so easy as it looks. So both the players made some moves. The game went on, and eventually, after making some progress, we have the trade of the queen. And the position is even. That's insane. Now, let's move on. Still even. And now h3, which turned out to be a big mistake by Wesley. You see, the bar has already favored in the white side. He should have played the move king d6. Bishop goes back, king over here. And guess what? Both the sides can't make any progress, and that's a draw. Definitely black can't make the progress, but white can't make the progress. And that's why the game is a draw. But it's very hard to see. h3 was played. Bishop over here, push. And white is totally winning now. But white made a huge blunder with a4. And now the game is draw. So first of all, why? Like, what's the winning approach? The winning approach could have been king e4. And the moment black plays b4, like, if you play a4, that would be a draw. Because that would be the same that happened in the game. You need to take. And after take over here, like, black makes the queen, puts the king on over here, and white is going to capture the pawn and make the queen. But now the difference here is, after a4, black pushed the pawn, and now this is a draw, because after over here, it looks like this is winning, because the king move, I take the pawn, and that's completely winning. But the point here is, black is going to make a queen, king over here, king over here. Now, if you try to go over here, I can play this over here, over here. You can't take the pawn because it would be a stalemate. And that's why this position is so insane. Let's say you try to go with your king over here to capture the pawn. Now, after king over here, now marking is also on time to capture this pawn. If there would have been only 1 pawn, white would have simply captured the pawn and made the queen. But there are 2 pawns now. So after takes, both the queen gets on the same time, and it's a draw. But on the move number 71, Wesley So surprisingly decided to resign the game. And that's why this was one of the most craziest results, because, like, if you don't see this variation, this is hopeless. Wesley thought this is a totally lost position. After king over here, white is going to capture the pawn and win the game. But once he reached home, when he saw with this position with the engine, he must be so unhappy, so sad with what he just did. He lost. He resigned in a drawn position, which is insane. Many of the commentators were not even believe this, but this is insane. So you see, these were the 3 games, one of the most craziest 3 games of the day number 2, of the round 2 of the FIDE World Cup 2025. I hope you guys loved the analysis of all the 3 games. If you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed the analysis, make sure to like, share, and smash that subscribe button. I'm going to see you soon. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.